Aaron, welcome back to the Fiduciary U Podcast. You are one of the handful of second guests that I've had. I think you actually were my second guest on the podcast back in 2020. So good to have you back.
Oh, it's great. Awesome. Thank you. No, glad to be here. Good to see you, man.
A lot of stuff has changed over the past couple of years. Vestwell is just kind of on a rocket ship, growth wise and buzz within the industry and what you guys are doing. So maybe just kind of give a little update, like what's 2022 been like for Vestwell overall, especially with what's going on in the markets and how have things been?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me again. It's great. So it's been an interesting year, right? To say the least, right? You look at the end of last year and rewind 12 months versus now, especially being in the fintech world. It's a very different world. I feel quite blessed and fortunate for where we are as a business. I think by and large, the approach we took to building Vestwell, how we thought about it, being pretty methodical about the approach and not chasing or deviating, has really paid dividends, especially kind of in today's world and today's economy. We never, like I said, we never really chased things. We didn't, it's easy to sit back, 12 months ago and you look at these companies getting ridiculous valuations and gobs of money thrown at them. And then in an instant they're gone, right? Because foundationally they were just never sound. And I think, we're in a business, right? And you spent your career in this, right? It's retirement. It's not the sexiest thing, but now all of a sudden it is, right? And planning for, your retirement and your education, your health is the hottest thing in the world right now, right? Because you're not chasing, some crypto thing or whatever it is, right? So that's actually worked really well. Where people have just gone back to the basics, right? As we were kind of chatting before, like people really have reset and said, okay, we got to look at businesses differently. So we're excited. We'll do, I wish I want to say almost 250% growth this year as a business, which has been great, right? It exceeded where we thought we were going to be. We've actually come in ahead of plan. When, even looking throughout the year, these things are tricky to start to gauge, but we've gotten pretty meticulous around kind of how we project the business and where it's going and how it's evolving and gotten really good at the data side of it. So we feel fortunate. The industry's really gotten behind us too, right? I feel like I've been at a couple of, events and conferences and whatnot, and that shift has happened where people have just said, wow, okay, we got to change how we're thinking about this landscape because clearly this is working for Vestwell, and I think that's permeating throughout the industry. So feel blessed, and it's exciting.
Yeah, you guys have absolutely, have crushed it. What do you think is the cause of that kind of shift? It's funny, especially around RIAs and advisors, and obviously, Vestwell supports plan sponsors, but really it's your channel, your advisor partners. I feel like that you guys kind of prioritize, help them, help their clients. That's kind of the world that I'm in now. It's funny. For years, I always felt like the retirement practices, everybody focused on RIAs on the private wealth side, more profitable and much more sexy. And it was like the retirement practices were like the crazy uncle who, when the family gatherings, they kept them in like the back room. But now like retirement, and I think it's driven around this kind of convergence and really kind of this focus on, well, how do we bridge retirement and wealth? You're seeing a big push there. Do you think that's kind of the shift? Is people are now waking up and saying, hey, instead of going out to, kind of market to people one by one, if we're running plans now or managing plans, we've got access to, 25, 50, 100, 500 employees that we can get, build trust and mind share with. Do you think that's been this kind of the switch that's flipped?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, right? So you have you see a couple different flavors, right, of the advisor kind of mindset and where their focus is. But, a lot of it is driven from, let's say, maybe a private wealth client that an advisor has that is running a business and either has an existing program or doesn't. And the advisor being able to step in and say, listen, I can bring you into my platform, right, powered by Vestwell, and have a better experience, a better price point, and a better kind of ability to serve and carry that relationship through. That's an easy sell for the advisor to have with that private wealth client. And then from the advisor mindset, it's like, yeah, all of a sudden now they have a broad swath of individuals to look at, say, oh, and I can drill down into their world and see, okay, does it make sense for these individuals to potentially, kick up a private wealth conversation, right? And that happens a lot, right? And it's super scalable, right? So, I mean, the name of the game, right, especially when you're dealing with in the small business segment, is scale. So how do you do it, quick and make it feel really good in that process? And I think that's a huge piece of it. And the advisors talk constantly, right? And paid to talk, right? In many ways. So which is
overpaid in some ways.
Yeah, that's arguable. But they, they're out there, doing this. And when advisors, and all of a sudden they talk to, someone else they respect in the industry, and they're like, yeah, I'm building a crushing business right now out of this, and it's awesome, and out of a segment that maybe was largely ignored, right? And then all of a sudden now people are jumping in, and there's a huge pool for people to jump into. So that's been pretty exciting to see that shift in mindset.
Yeah. When I said overpaid, I didn't mean advisors are overpaid in general, more overpaid to talk sometimes.
Fair.
But advisors make their money in down markets, right? It's the behavioral piece. Like, this is where advisors really show their mettle. But, I think the other flip side to that is not just, and I've been having this conversation actually with a lot of private wealth advisors. Had a lot of conversations recently with private wealth firms, that really high end private wealth firms that haven't really played in 401k before. And, one of the things I've been saying to them is it's not just about finding, let's say, new relationships. It's about protecting those existing ones. You mentioned that high net worth, maybe that, business owner that's got a $3 million portfolio or a $5 million portfolio or $1 million portfolio with a private wealth firm. What's interesting, and when I talk to these private wealth firms, like, they don't know what's happening on the M&A front in the retirement side. They don't know what's going on with the hubs and the one digitals and the cap trusts. In some cases, these private wealth firms, they're like, who are they? I mean, people have heard of cap trust, but it's been interesting. I've been saying, look, what you don't know is these aggregators, what they're doing is they're buying up these retirement shops, and really where they're focused is not just retirement, but having wealth conversations. And if one of these firms that you don't know are out there, so you don't even know what's happening, gets in and they get the plan for your high net worth business owner, you better believe that 6, 12, 18 months down the road, they're going to be pitching that private client of yours on their private wealth services. And so in some ways, you need to have for whether you do it or whether you partner with somebody else who's a friendly face, it's an important, I think, strategic play to kind of build a firewall, if you will, around those private wealth relationships. And it's funny when I mentioned some of the active firms that are rolling up these retirement practices, a lot of the private wealth firms, they're like, I've never even heard of them. And I'm like, you might want to pay attention. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's a real competitive threat.
I think it's a very real, real thing that you see out there. But by and large, a lot of our conversations with the advisors or the larger, like, broker dealers or wirehouses or banks is like, hey, you need a program, a platform, and it has to stay in the complex, right? Because otherwise someone else is going to pull it away from you. And, and a lot of our pitch, right, is like, hey, you get your own platform, your own program in your own house, and you have zero overhead in the process. And we're going to take off all the heavy lifting and put it on our shoulders. And you don't have to think about right? And you can just run your business as you want to run your business in an unconflicted way. And we're not getting paid, by offering asset management and trying to, walk business out the back door or whatever it may be, right? Ours, we want to provide the tech, and services if they want it, or if they want to do it, great.
Right. And that is, so as you've kind of seen, and we talked a little bit before we started recording, was how you're kind of seeing a shift in terms of like new business opportunity, where it was probably much more heavily weighted. And I think by your own admission, historically, Vestwell has really been focused on maybe that startup to, let's say, 5 million. That's kind of maybe your sweet spot historically, where you were seeing more new business kind of much more heavily weighted towards kind of the startup and the smaller, but you're starting to see more of a shift to, I think you'd mentioned maybe 50-50 of kind of startup new plans versus conversions. What do you see is driving that? And are you finding the more private wealth focused practices are doing more kind of startup, having those conversations with their business owner startup, and more of the established kind of historically dedicated retirement practices are doing more conversion? Or how do you see that mix playing out?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the last piece of it, whether it's established or not. But I will say, so there's 3 factors that we see, right? Factor number 1 is the advisors have really liked the experience of Vestwell, right? We've spent the last year has by and large been spent on reshaping the underlying workflows, the technology, the structures, just to make sure everything runs really smoothly, right? And when the advisors, first come onto Vestwell, by and large, it's like, okay, well, we're going to bring startups first. We're going to make sure we understand the experience, we like the experience. And then as that
kind of take it for a test drive, if you will.
Yeah, take it for a test drive, right? And if all goes well, they're like, okay, great, let's go, right? And then they start piling it on. So we've reached this point kind of in our life cycle and our maturity as a business where the advisors get comfortable very quickly, and they start bringing more conversions, right? They start bringing those off of someone. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is the advisors too are finding it, I think, easier to engage with a client or a prospective client that has an existing 401k today, and bring them into their platform powered by Vestwell. It's an easier conversation because it's unconflicted, it's cheaper, better experience, all of that stuff, right? But they already have something that they're paying for today, and now you're going to basically say, yeah, you're going to save money and you're going to have a better experience all around, and I'm going to be able to help you and your employees a lot better than I can otherwise. Versus, in kind of these turbulent, volatile markets, it's harder to convince a startup, right, business to say, hey, let's get your plan going. It's going to cost you an extra few grand a year. And they're looking at like, I don't really know what's going on right now, and I want to just pump the brakes. So I think that's partly impacting the shift to conversions that we're seeing from a percentage basis on our platform from a per plan. The assets are obviously, more established on that side. On the counter of that, though, it also raises or elevates the state mandated IRA programs that we're powering, right? We're powering 75% of the states today. So though we're seeing a lift over there because on the state side, or the startup business side, they're looking at and say, well, I'm going to just do this now, it's free, and then I'll convert it, later on when I get more comfortable. So that's great. Selfishly, we're winning on either side. But then the third point is we rolled out this TPA portal, right? The TPA Flex platform at the end of the summer, and that's taken off like wildfire. So a lot of the TPAs, right, are now looking at this, and they're bringing books over, right, which are typically conversions, to start dropping them on our platform. So we kind of have, 3 different aspects that are all, raising the bar as far as who we're engaging with and how we're engaging with them.
And that value prop, so that like what drove the kind of the TPA piece?
Yeah, so it
what
was
strategically drove the mindset shift to say, hey, now it's not just about advisors, it's about TPAs as well.
Yeah. So Richard Tatum, who's the president of our retirement services, he, founded and owned a TPA. called Aventus that got acquired by Future Plan. And he was the one that first incepted the idea. He's like, listen, we got all this business piling on, and we don't want to, we do a lot of servicing, but like our superpower is technology, right? And building that out and helping to reshape how servicing works. But I was like, listen, we don't want to build out a giant servicing organization. There's a lot of businesses that candidly like are better in the hands of a TPA specialist that can step in and do this stuff versus us. So let's allow them to do that so we can basically, continue to build and not get stuck, constantly servicing aspects of these businesses. So that was how it came to be. But then we rethought the pricing of it, rethought how the engagement would work. And with the technology that we built, we've been able to automate a lot of the hard stuff in between, right? So the TPAs were a little bit taken aback where we said, hey, here's the pricing you're going to have to go to market with. And they're like, whoa. How are you dictating our pricing, right? And we said, we're like, listen, just trust us. Go to market with this pricing. We're going to make your life that much easier. And it's well worth, what would be perceived as a revenue hit, right? Your gross margin on the business is going to far exceed what you would be doing otherwise. And if you want to, add on additional services on top, that's all well and good. And obviously they're free to do that, but the base level kind of pricing is what we kind of lay out to be. And it's worked really well. And we've had a couple TPAs come back to us. We're like, man, this is awesome. Like you've just made our life 10 times easier than it was otherwise. So
make them more profitable. They're
running a healthy.
Maybe their revenue goes down, but their profitability goes up because you're taking kind of the heavier lift off
their revenue on a per plan basis is not what it would be otherwise, but their gross margin, their profit on that business is far higher than it would be. And they're able to do that much more volume without having to go hire more heads internally to scale that practice. Right. So all in, they're building a much healthier business in the long run than they would be doing otherwise.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting, I could be off base here, but it seems like this is just part of the natural evolution of Vestwell moving from call it services with a technology platform to more of like, hey, now we really want to be more of the technology platform. We can still offer services, but if they're better partners to kind of unplug that, kind of facilitate that shift in some ways.
Yeah. I mean, our whole motive from the beginning was like, we just want to be the tech, right? Now, better than anyone, right? This is a super complicated industry, a super complicated business. So we had to kind of control the variables when we started, right? And just as we did with like asset management and investment services, right? We first started, we kept it very bundled because we're like, okay, we need to control all of this. And then as we continue to grow and mature and scale, we were able to kind of continue to unbundle aspects of the platform. And now we're pretty much to like a fully unbundled stack, right? Where you could just say, okay, we have like, for example, like BNY Mellon handles a lot of our end client servicing, right? The end client, the end saver servicing, right? So they're actually logging into our platform to facilitate the servicing to the end savers, right? Or same thing, we can do that with the client on the, and the employer side, right? And so we're slowly we've been rolling out all of these different, let's call it interfaces and structures where they can come into the platform to do what they do. And like the analogy I use is like, hey, look at us as the car manufacturer, right? You tell us what color you want it, what features you want in the car, and we'll build it for you, configure it for you, and we'll flip you the keys and you can drive. And if you're not comfortable driving, sure, we'll be your personal driver too. But, in the long run, you're going to want to drive yourself.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that is, it's part of it is proving out. I think that's partly where kind of the momentum for you guys has come from is like, you got to prove the model out to start, right? That early on, like and like you said, you had to kind of control the overall experience because the reality is you probably weren't going to get people who were going to place bets on you. You had to kind of bet on yourself and build it out and then scale from there. And it sounds like, I know you guys have had tremendous growth as well. One, I think the early criticisms early on was really high touch support, and then you went through kind of like some explosive growth, and you guys were having to resize your business a little bit support wise. It sounds like you guys have kind of figured that out. With these partnerships.
Listen, those are the situations you'd want to be in as a business, right? Where you're a bit overwhelmed with the volume, but we had to hunker down and really focus on the scaling aspects of it. And just to like put a specific point on it, like right now, this time last year, a person doing an onboarding for the business coming onto the platform, the plans coming on, a single FTE was able to support between 10 and 12 businesses, right, in flight when they're coming onto the platform. We now have that same structure. We've scaled it so that single FTE can do over 60 plans in a cycle, right? And by this, and I think we can get that. Our head of implementations feels very confident that we can get that over 80 ahead, right? So you got
and what's enabled? So what has enabled that?
So a lot. It's we've gone back in every step, and I have massive flow charts that I could bore you to tears with, but went through every step, and we're like, okay, and we kind of map it to like happy and sad, right? We're like, here's the happy path, right? Here's where it goes off the rails, right? And where things get complicated, and then you really, if you don't get it right, it's hard to get back on the rails. So we just like got really, really specific and dissected every touch point along the way, and then looked at where we could change that, right? Like we did this huge process with DocuSign is a product they offer called CLM, and we took it to the extreme, to the point where DocuSign was like, holy shit, we've never seen someone actually do this with our software. They actually just wrote a white paper about it because they were so blown away by what we did. So we took a process that, I forget how long it took to start. Like it took, let's call it an hour, 2 hours, and we condensed that down to about 3 minutes. Right. So when you layer in the volume of the businesses that we're bringing on, it has huge impacts to the scaling of the platform. And it's just that. It's like the granularity of every little thing you do along the way. The first payroll process, right? The first touches, all of those things we just rethought, retooled, spent a lot of times. Even our team internally, we're doing an all hands a while ago. And I spent like the entire all hands talking about operational efficiency and gross margin. And someone from our team was like, I've never been at a company where there's this much like everything is like, how are we going to continue to scale, right? Usually it's always like revenue, right? And just pile it on. And we're like, no, we got to do this first, because if this isn't right, all of that stuff's not going to matter later on.
Yeah. Yeah. That, this kind of shift that we're seeing, and it's just kind of this focus on running profitable businesses. If you're in, your side of the business, if you're an advisor, is, a lot of times there is this focus on growth and revenue, but, not all revenue is good revenue. If you're bringing on, $20,000 of revenue, that's going to cost you $30,000 to service. Like, that's not a good equation. And really starting to think about, and I think that, how do you streamline and, build growth, scalability, efficiency, and consistency? I mean, I think if you're on the record keeping side, I think if you're on the advisory side, like those are really the four things. If you can solve for those four equations, how do we drive growth? But when we do, how do we make sure that we can scale that growth? And how do we be more efficient? I think one of the challenges with advisors, and this is where I think maybe even for the TPA portal and for advisors as well, where you guys are helping them get it right, is most advisors think the solution to every capacity challenge is to hire. It's a talent issue, but that's super expensive. You got to find people, you got to pay them, you got to train them, you got to manage them, instead of making technology your next hire. And I think to really service that small end of the market, that kind of under $5 million, you can't bring a large market consulting where you've got 20 different record keeping partners that you got to work with. Like, you got to find that one or two record keeping partners, and we're going to standardize kind of the Henry Ford, right? You can have any color Model T you want as long as it's black. I hate to say that, but that's to really drive profitability where fees are you're not going to be able to charge what you can on a 25 or a 50 or $100 million plan. I think that's really important. I think that's where you guys are really helping advisors like make technology their next hire.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think that it's absolutely true. Like we a lot of this is, and there's ways, even as we've matured, right, and continue to more deeply understand various aspects of the business, right, where you can open up the aperture wider because you get more comfortable on like how it's going to scale and what you can do. And I think we also recognize like what we do well and what we don't, right? And I would say, a couple of years ago, we would take on businesses that we probably shouldn't have, right? And now we're just like, we'll either say, hey, listen, this is not where our strong suit is, or we'll give it to the TPA, right? And say, hey, you do this. This is more in your wheelhouse than ours, right? We don't want this.
Are you driving deal flow at all? Are you driving deal flow to TPA partners at all?
A ton of it. I mean, daily we're sending business to TPAs. And they're using our platform to do it. It makes our life easier. They get businesses that are great for them, and we all win in the end of it. So, so you just gotta kind of know yourself and know where those suits lie and where you really want to focus the business and where the opportunities sit. And the advisors pick up on it, right? And they see it and they're just like, oh man, I can do this all day. And it's healthy, like right? You could pick up several $1 million across several startup plans or several smaller conversions quickly, versus going to find that same volume on an individual private wealth basis.
Yeah, or even the sales cycle from a conversion standpoint. I mean, I think there's a real I know for me in my past life, like the startup market was just it wasn't something we felt like we could deliver, profitably. But as I look at it now with advances in tech and platforms like Vestwell and just the activity, partly mandate driven, but just in general, like I think there's a huge opportunity in the startup market. And I think advisors, that what doesn't work, like, if you're an advisor, it was funny. I was down at a conference a few months back, and I was at a dinner with a bunch of advisors, and they were talking about, that they had to take on startup plans because they were in like either a bank channel or they were in a business where there was like a EB side. And basically it's like, we have to take on like startup plans or plans that may not be ideal, mainly because of the relationship. If it's a bank client and it's a big bank client, but it's not a big revenue opportunity or a big plan, we still have to take it on because, our bankers don't want, the client going somewhere else. And, I was like, well, do you charge minimum fees? And they were like, yeah, we do. It's here's what we charge. And I was like, why don't you like double your minimum fee, triple your minimum fee? Like, if you position it the right way, could you charge, $500, $7,500, $8,000, something like that for a startup plan? I think there's that opportunity that's out there if you position it the right way. And if you're having plan formation, it's probably a lot easier to have those conversations than, I think, conversions. I know you mentioned conversions. You're getting kind of a big shift for maybe existing relationships. But it's a long sales cycle to get an existing plan to convert, hire a new advisor, move a record keeper and whatnot. So I don't know. I just think there's a really big opportunity. But if you're going to focus on that market, you have to standardize and you have to, you can't take the same bespoke consulting approach that you do probably up market.
No, totally. And you just kind of, you can fly through it. Listen, I love the startup space, right? There's less than 3% of these small businesses have something in place today. So there's a giant pool to jump into.
Yeah.
And you can do it quickly and scale it efficiently, whether it's a flat fee, a per head fee, whatever. There's all of those variables that are quite palatable to an employer when you're rolling out their first 401k, and they're like, okay, I'll do this, right? So the advisor's like, oh man, I don't want to do the startup because I'm going to charge 50 bips on nothing, right? Where it's like, hey, just you either put the minimum, put a per head fee, whatever it is.
Basis points don't work in startups. You got to charge a minimum. You got to charge a minimum fee, and you better charge it high enough that because they're still work.
There's still work, right? But you can rip through it quickly and scale it quickly, and we've been super fortunate with that. It's awesome. Like I love it, and candidly, like as a provider, right? as a service, as a financial services industry, right? Now we're all collectively able to help and engage and touch more people than we would be otherwise, right? Which is the end. That's the whole game, right? At the end of this, like how can we reach the people who need it most, the people who don't have anything?
Yeah, absolutely. What, maybe shifting kind of the conversation, we didn't talk about this in prepping, but I wanted to bring it up. Like, there's been this huge push in certain corners of the market around crypto and 401k plans and whatnot. And now you got FTX blowing up and kind of turmoil. What's your take on, as a tech guy and, as an investor and then with your business as well, like, what's your take on kind of crypto now in the 401k market, and how are you seeing, or like any of those, were you getting a lot of push for it before? Have those conversations dried up? Like, what's your take on that?
So in a way, I think it's a good thing. Some of these, flashy objects have kind of blown up, right? Because it puts a higher level of scrutiny around the industry as a whole, which is needed, right? We all need to dig in more. The regulators need to look at this differently and need to clean it up, right? Not that it's dirty, right? I think there's just a lot of folks who jump into that space that maybe don't, like they haven't lived in the financial services world like you or I, right? Where you kind of understand the how these governing bodies intersect and how you have to work with them. And I think these governing bodies, by and large, are good, right? And I was actually at I was talking to someone down in DC recently who's quite a senior person, and I'm not going to say which arm of DC, but I was just like, listen, when are you guys going to get behind the crypto world, right? And the person responded and said, listen, we will. It just has to change how they're approaching it and marketing it, right? And I don't think this. I think the systemic flaw is more around the businesses, like these exchanges or whatnot. It's not around the asset itself. It's not around Bitcoin or Ether or how these things are. Like that will remain. That's not going anywhere. But some of these businesses that are, not structured properly are, they're kind of putting a stain or a mark across the rest of the industry. So I think by and large it's going to happen. I think that the person in Capitol Hill was like, listen, it's going to happen. The marketing has to change. I think now it's changed. Before, like, you look at Super Bowl ads last year, right? It was like, hey, you need to invest in crypto if you got any shot at getting rich, right? And like that has to change, right? Like you can't do that as an asset manager, right? And so you have to invest in this or else you're not getting, right? Like that stuff has to change and be reformulated. And I think then it'll stabilize across kind of how these offerings are put together. But we still get asked constantly for it, right?
Yeah.
Especially, in the younger demographic, they still want it. Like people are still, I'm still invested in crypto, right? I'm not jumping out of the market because FTX collapsed. I wasn't doing anything through FTX, right? So,
right. Yeah. It is an interesting, the governance and the regulatory component. I would imagine those conversations, when you've got the shakeout, which is probably good, but there's a lot of pain that kind of goes through it. And, it's interesting. I feel like crypto and 401k is kind of like falling back a little bit. And I suspect it's going to be like that for a while. And most good advisors, I don't know many good advisors who are out there being like, I want to put crypto in my clients' 401k plans. But I think this probably provides some air cover. It's just even interesting, like FTX, like the amount of like really smart people and VC firms and like people who like invested in FTX that, I guess their due diligence for whatever reason, like they missed the boat. It's going to be very hard for plan sponsors to be able to do the due diligence, in my opinion. I think crypto for a while. I think there's going to be a cold winter around crypto and 4K for a while, which is probably a good thing until the regulatory and governance structure gets really kind of stronger and cleaned up.
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, I think some of the pressures come off. I think there still is pressure, or at least we see it. And I personally, I really want to do something in that space and create an offering around it, but I'm not doing it until the regulators get behind it.
Right.
So I'll keep pushing on that side, and I think sooner or later it will happen. I just don't know when.
Fidelity was talking all about it. They've been pretty quiet on the front when they were talking about it before and whatnot. Where let's as we kind of wrap up. Got a few more minutes here. Where do you see the future of fintech in the retirement space going? I think you've seen a lot of fintech on the private wealth side, and a proliferation of that. And I think retirement in general has been a bit of a laggard. We talked at the beginning about how, retirement practices now are kind of like having their bell of the ball moments. Where do you see fintech going in the retirement space? Where do you see it needing to go to really help advisors succeed and scale?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, selfishly, I look at it like they all need Vestwell, right, to succeed and scale. But no, seriously, I think there has been this transformation, as I kind of mentioned before, where before it was just that sidecar, right, and that that kind of no one really thought about it, but they wanted something, and they were okay with it not being up to par with all the other technologies we use in our life. And now that it's like, hey, it's on center stage and the spotlight's on and this is your moment to shine, I think there has to be that shift into the underlying technology and how it's being shown and what's being used and how it's moving. So I do think this is our moment to really step up as an industry and reshape how those conversations are going. I think part of it too, what we've seen and is on the managed account side, right, which feeds into the goals-based planning side. And that has really come to light where, everyone talks about health and wellness and so on. No one has ever, I think delivered it in a succinct format where it's palatable to everyone. A lot of times it's just overkill for everyone, right? And we spent a lot of time thinking about like, how do you just create these foundational building blocks for others to build upon? And that's where I think we've spent an enormous amount of time there, have been really successful, and are really seeing it take off. Where the business is coming on the platform today. We offer managed accounts to the folks coming on, and it's like a personalized experience for every end saver. We have over like a 65% take rate on that, right? Versus like a target group.
That statistic somewhere, maybe it was Fred Barstein who was asking you about that. I mean, it's a bit of a crazy. That is in terms of managed account adoption. That's like off the charts.
Yeah, we'll do. I don't think quite. We rolled it out in the early summer, I think. We'll do not quite 1,000, but starting to broach that of plans this year in the managed account world, right?
And how is that structure built, right? You guys partnered. Is that where you're leveraging like the Go engine from Franklin Templeton?
We hit the Go engine. Yeah. So basically, it's all built by Vestwell, right, front to back, and then as the user, they step in, say, okay, if they're going to use managed accounts or it's on there as a QDAA, we ask like 3 questions, right? And then it creates a baseline kind of investment model for them that they can tweak and adjust. But through that, and then it runs through all the scenarios and Monte Carlos and so on. That's what we ping off of the Go engine for, right? It's all the capital market assumptions and whatnot. So it's an API out to them, to the Go engine, and then comes back. But it's fully open architecture from an investment perspective, right? So it can be any investment funds that the advisor wants or the plan sponsor wants to include. and then it just basically reformulates and recalculates based on what's there. And then we have the ability, like Social Security you plug in, or outside account aggregation, like all of these things that start to really get important for the individual when you're investing the right way. So I think that's how we've structured it, and it's worked phenomenal. And it's fully embedded. It's not like a pop out somewhere, or like here's this standalone thing on the side that you got to go, log into, or a single sign on. It is all part of the native experience that an individual walks through. And it's priced really cheaply, right? It's like a third of what you would see out there in the market from other providers.
And what role is the advisor playing in that? Is it really populating the underlying investments within the models?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, working with the sponsor, right? Picking out the investments, what they want to include. They can also do other strategies too, right? It doesn't have to be the managed account, right? They can have the managed account and then stand up, alongside, other strategies if they just want to, offer target dates or offer some other sort of solution.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
So I think so we're excited about that, and I think the other thing I'll mention that we're super excited about, we just we spent the last 18 months building a massive enhancement to our underlying core engine. And we went live with that, and it's been flying, and, hats off to the team for what they've been able to create. And I do think it's truly game changing in this industry. Like, this becomes the backbone for this industry for the next 20 plus years, right? Of how it's going to be run. We reshaped front to back, from a open architecture, multi-custody, multi-savings program infrastructure that can run front to back in a real-time fashion. So like we touched on it kind of before we started jumping on this call, but it'll do corrections real time, right? So the stuff that used to take a week or 2 weeks, even in some instances where you have to do a correction in a process, we're now able to real time correct it and adjust it and represent it back to the client and back to the end saver, which has really huge implications to the user experience, but also operationally creates a ton of efficiencies for us. And it runs somewhere in the realm of about 5 times more efficient than a traditional kind of record keeping stack. Loans, distributions, things like that, we can basically send out, T+1, T+2, depending on what types of funds are in the plan itself. As soon as they settle, we can distribute and wire immediately. So like all of these things really just kind of reshape how the stuff runs. And then we're going to layer in the 529s and the ABLs and all of those. So you can basically, you'll just be running them through one experience front to back for the end saver. And then you'll have a plethora of options on how to do it and get that experience that we all expect in the world today.
Yeah. And creating kind of that efficiency and that kind of ease of end user experience. Or, there was I think I posted about it or in my newsletter, you've got like Fidelity and Vanguard and I think Alight, right? There's the consortium around how do we just make it easier, moving away from these kind of antiquated, like how manual and how long it takes, to deal with issues within the retirement industry that like you said, in most other aspects of our life, it's much more seamless and kind of real time. And so interesting to see. And that's probably part of that redefining and really building the tech to be able to do it. But, I've learned this now and kind of building tech is that you actually have to, it's a lot harder to, it's better to think through the workflow and the process up front and then code something and have to go back and try to rework it. It's much, much more difficult. And it sounds like that's really what you guys have spent 18 months doing is as you built your own kind of from the ground up. Because I don't think you started with that, right? I think you had kind of built early on, you built on top of maybe like Relias or Omni or something like that. And then you unplugged them and kind of built from the ground up your own record keeping system. And it sounds like the past 18 months has been going back and then saying, okay, how do we maybe reimagine, rethink, redesign that entire process? Is that a fair?
You got it. Spot on.
Fair thing?
we didn't get it perfect, out of the gate, but you learn from this stuff, right? And you're like, okay, this is what works great. This other area does not work great, right? Yeah. How do we bring the best of all of these worlds together? And that's what we've done. And like it's been a big lift, right? Yeah. But it's been awesome. And now that we put our first, few hundred plans on, it's super exciting to see it actually come to life, right? And like have its own heartbeat and be functioning. So, and then it's just going to continue to grow from there.
Yeah, perfect. There's that saying that perfect is the enemy of good. And I think that is, I see this with a lot of advisors. Like they want things to be perfect. And the reality is like we don't live in a world of perfection. Like we live in a world of like progress. And if we can, continue to iterate, right? That I think is the you want to partner with companies. And even as an advisor, how do you, I know, over my career, didn't always get things right. That's okay. Like don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to try things. Even if it fails, what are the learnings that come from it? But it's really about kind of progress, not perfection. If you wait for perfection, whether it's what you're doing for a client or any, with partners, like it's never going to get there. You're going to be stuck in neutral. And so having more of this mindset of, build, test, validate. How do we, fail as quickly as possible, but fail forward, take learnings and continue to refine and iterate. I think that's, that's much more of a technology kind of, tech mindset than it is kind of like a professional services mindset. But I think the firms that really embrace that are going to be the ones who probably make the furthest progress over time and continue to improve. And I think that's what you guys have done, over the years as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. We're trying, but I agree. Like you gotta, and candidly, like the more you're able to kind of build and control in that world, the more you can iterate and not, be dependent on someone else or some other thing that you can't control, right? Yep. You sound a little bit like a control freak, or I do when doing it, but it's like, no, but it really helps shape the end user experience, which ultimately, we're striving to really reset the bar on. So a lot more to come, but
very cool. Very cool. Well, Aaron, I've enjoyed our chat, our conversation, have a ton of respect for you as always and appreciate our friendship. And just, it's been very cool to see kind of the rocket ship that has been Vestwell. You and I originally met. When did you start Vestwell? What year?
It was September 2016.
Okay. So I think in early 2017, I think maybe in April of 17, you and I were actually at in Chicago at a DFA conference, and you and I sat next to each other at dinner, and you were just getting started. I was kind of skeptical. You're like, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm like, man, that's never going to work. And, shame on me. It's just been awesome.
You weren't the only one, but no, I remember that vividly. Yeah. We were at that restaurant near the lake in Chicago, and it was a beautiful night too. I remember.
It was. It wasn't that beautiful of a night because instead of, if I was really smart, I would have been like, hey, Aaron, how do I get in on the friends and family round? I missed the opportunity.
I've had a couple people that either, that passed or didn't, couldn't invest at the time, come back to me, and they're just like, so what would it be worth now?
I don't even want to know. Don't even tell me. I don't want to know what that is.
But no, it's been fun. And I remember that. Listen, I appreciate it. I love any chance we get to catch up and you've been a huge help and supporter through this, and off to your own awesome things too with Fiduciary RX. So it's great to see us all kind of come together.
Awesome. Well, I know you need to run to another meeting, but appreciate the time, enjoyed the conversation, and look forward to catching up soon.